everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Q&A series that we're starting here at the Shed Organics. Now, I did ask earlier on last week if anyone had any questions that they wanted to send in. Each and every week we're speaking to many different people, both in person and on our social media, about various different garden topics, and we're diving deep into various different nuances and things that are really specific to certain people's situations in their gardens. There's a lot of general information there as well, but I thought this type of series really lends itself to be able to answer a few questions publicly and then give everybody a little bit more insight into the conversations we're having each week and some of the things that we're aiming to help people with in their gardens. So what I've done is I've taken 4 of the questions that I've been collecting over our various social media sites over the last week or so. And then I've also picked one that was in a recent Facebook gardening group that I decided to pull out because I also thought that was a very relevant question to a lot of us here in Southeast Queensland. Now, first question, let's jump straight in, may as well. What is the best way to create a new garden bed using the no-till method over an existing lawn? So my first thoughts go 2 different places, and then it depends on time frame. Initially, if you've got a nice patch of grass, you want to be probably, if you've got the effort, the elbow grease, you want to be maybe lifting up that first few inches of turf. The reason being is that unless we're getting rid of that grass, you're probably going to have a whole lot of it coming and growing back through into your garden bed. So initially, we want to try and remove that grass, whether that's going around and edging out and digging out that garden bed, or my second thought, which was to maybe cover it with some plastic or cardboard or something like that. Really cover and completely shut off the light for that grass. You could probably leave that quite a few weeks in the sun and really make sure that all that grass is died off underneath the plastic. Then you can go maybe start tilling in those first few inches of soil where all the dead grass and roots are going to start feeding the soil as a carbon source. You possibly need to throw down some cover crop into that newly turned over soil, get something growing in it and some life in it straight away, because it's been under that solarized cover for quite a while now, quite a few weeks. So it's probably better to really get something growing in there straight away. If you're looking to do it quickly, I would probably get the shovel in, start removing those first few layers of grass, get into that soil and start to build it up with some nice organic matter, some nice topsoil, and not have any grass growing through. You might also want to edge it as well, so you're not getting that grass creeping into your garden bed slowly, especially when there's some nice healthy soil in there for it to grow into. But yeah, if you've got the time, maybe throw down some plastic, let it really kill off the grass in that area, and it'll bring all the worms up to the top and really eat down that grass. So that should be my best option in that regard. So let's move on. Question 2. What should I do if I accidentally compact my garden beds by walking on them? Now, this one's pretty simple in terms of my view. Nature is not perfect. We've got so many things, animals, our pets or even wild animals that are just running in and out of our garden beds. Children, hopefully, going through and, picking fresh produce off. So walking and stepping on garden beds isn't a bad thing. Compaction is quite natural. It happens in nature and we get this compacting off the ground. Where I would say be careful, obviously, is if you've got fresh seedlings. Anything that requires nice, light, airy soil as well is going to be difficult to grow in hard, compact soil. So just be mindful of what you're growing where. But if you've accidentally stood on it, I think that's no problem at all. I think you're going to be absolutely fine. All right, question 3. I've been meaning to add an organic mulch to my garden beds. What mulch is best? Mostly have vegetables and some flower beds. So mulch is an interesting topic. It can be quite a debate in some instances. For instance, on my property here, I'm using a lot of barley straw. The reason I like barley straw is because it's good carbon material that's going to feed the soil. It also builds up. You can build up quite a layer of it. Sometimes, depending on your source, you get some seeds, which means you get some barley growing up. To me, I think that's only beneficial because we use barley in our cover crop mix, so that's only going to be beneficial for the soil. But maybe on larger scales, you might not want to use barley straw, or at least make sure it's heat treated or something, so that there's no seeds in it. You've got other types of mulch like your barks, any sort of tree barks from hardwood, softwood, anything like this. That really depends on how it breaks down. Certain mulches will actually leach some nutrients out of the soil. That's often why, if you've heard of hugelkultur beds, where they're mounding up over some wood or putting lots of logs and things down the bottom of a garden bed, and we're building up on top of that, often it takes a little while for that soil to become viable to grow anything in, because we're stealing nutrients. The wood is actually stealing nutrients from the soil before it's then broken down and fed back to soil. So long term, it feeds the soil quite well, but initially in those first few years, the mulch or the whatever you're using in that wood is stealing from the soil. So just be mindful of that one. The other one that comes to mind is grass clippings. A lot of people tend to just throw grass clippings on. Again, just be careful. I would probably solarize them in the sun, let them go brown first before using grass clippings anywhere. And because of the fine nature of them, often it gets really compacted. It can become hydrophobic sometimes. So just be mindful of grass clippings themselves. So go-to would be some sort of straw, some sort of organic, carbon-based material, maybe like a sugarcane mulch we have a lot of here in Australia. That's also very good. So we definitely want to just be careful with the types of mulch we're using, and be wary as to what's taking from the soil and what's adding to it, and the reasons why we're doing that. So in your particular instance, vegetables, flowers, I would probably go for a straw-based approach. If it's more flower beds and things like this in the ground, you might be better off going with a wood chip of some sort, and that can last a lot longer. So yeah, those are some considerations. Question 4. What are some signs that my soil is lacking certain nutrients? And how can I address these deficiencies organically? So this one, there's so much nuance to it, and it depends on the plant. I've actually got a citrus down here. I'm not sure if you can see it in shot, where the top leaves are starting to show some deficiencies. So I might jump into a video and show you how I'm going to fix that in a future date. But it's often through the plants that we can tell when our when our soil has a deficiency. You tend to want to grow something in it to see if it's viable. So if we've got a fresh patch of fresh patch of soil, we've just moved in, new garden beds, or something we're trying to set up, you've just set up new garden beds with new soil, try planting something in it. It's going to be a very good idea of whether or not it's healthy soil. If you can't grow anything in it, then it's maybe worth getting a soil test, finding out where your soil sits in terms of its breakdown of nutrients and what's available. And then also double checking that both your pH of your soil can be a little bit detailed, can be a little bit advanced for those, but pH is one to consider as well. And then rainwater, things like this, whether you're using rainwater or town water or anything like this, adding certain compounds to your soil, you've got to be really careful of. Like, for instance, in town water, there might be quite a lot of pesticides and herbicides. We have our local councils are spraying a weed killer in public areas, which then leaks into the water systems and then comes into our soil. So we end up watering that onto our garden beds. So if you've got a water that is highly concentrated in pesticides, herbicides, you're not going to be able to grow anything in any soil that you're watering, because it's just killing all the life in there anyway. So something to consider. Soil test, okay, grow something in it. Otherwise, if you know certain crops really well, you could grow something that you know really well, and then you can start to see which deficiencies are in it. But it's a bit of time, bit of testing, and you'll get there in the end. So it's a great question, and I'd love to go into more nuance, depending on what types of plants we're growing and vegetables and things like that. So, final question. This one I picked up from a gardening Facebook group. And I thought it was really worth just saying, because we all have common problems like this, and this is actually a really big problem for me at my place here. So I've noticed that my soil has quite a lot of ants. I've already tried putting cinnamon where they are, and I've also tried diatomaceous earth, but they aren't going away. Any suggestions? So yeah, first of all, this question is really relevant to me. I've got a lot of ants, and in often dry, arid climates, we do get lots of ants, especially somewhere here like Brisbane, Queensland. Um, so in terms of ants, if you've tried cinnamon, I know that there's other certain things that ants just do not like the diatomaceous earth. Sometimes it can be a deterrent, which is great, but often the bottom line for me is that ants don't like moisture. So if you've got the correct amount of moisture in your soil, or the correct amount of moisture in the garden bed, you're not going to be struggling with ants. Ants will tend to target dry areas, dry pockets, and build from there. So we don't want to give them any dry pockets to be able to work with. That includes mulching, having ground cover plants, things like this, so that we're allowing all of the soil to be totally connected, both above and below the soil. We've got a nice even watering system that we use, and then we're consistently watering during peak seasons, things like this, where we're losing water. So keeping an eye on the moisture level, to me, is probably the best way to control your ants. I've not had any ants in anywhere where I've had perfectly moist soil. So something to think about. Anytime I've got ants, it's always in the dry things, the cactus gardens, things like this. So I really hope that helps. So yeah, let's bring this video to a close. This is episode 1. What I'd really love is if you could drop any more questions down on this video in the comment section below. That would help me immensely. I'm always looking for new questions anyway, so I'm going to gather a whole bunch of really relevant questions and start pushing out a few more of these Q&A video series. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know below. Let me know any tips or extras that I missed, and let's go on to the next one, and we'll see you again very soon. Thanks for watching.